ourselves, except for ourselves.
Our next caller is from Georgia. Hi.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to just give America something to think about here now. What's happened over the last couple hundred years is basically everyone knows blacks have been denied rights and a lot of things. Now, we had to use these resources, these human resources, and made these people more productive. This country wouldn't be in the position that it's in now. I mean, if we all pull together, we can do great. If we're all fighting amongst each other, then the Japanese, the West, the Europeans, I mean, these people stick together. They can overcome the problems. They can advance technologies, and basically they'll succeed.
All right. We get your point, sir. Are we wasting a resource, Latifa?
As far as I'm concerned, we're wasting a lot of resources. A lot of our time is spent on game playing politically. We're not so much interested in actually solving the problem as opposed to being politically correct in doing it. You know, and that's what, you know, now Bush is ready to, it's time for Bush to be reelected. Now he's trying to do things. Now he's trying to make changes. Now he's trying to go to Japan and do this and do that. When all he accomplished by going to Japan was rhetoric and fainting and throwing up in front of people. So, you know, to me that was just game playing. It was something done to fool Americans once again into voting for him. And he hasn't done anything to deserve to be in office as far as I'm concerned. So I will not vote for Bush. And I think that more Americans need to wake up and see that these are the games that come around every election period. It's just the game playing that's involved. You please me, I please you for now, until I get my position, and then I could care less about you. And yes, I'll raise your taxes. So, you know, I'm not really into all of that.
Let's talk to Virginia. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Mary Johnson, and I'm calling in concerning about interracial marriage about with black people. And when the stars, you know, get great and everything, and then they go on and marry other races. And what do you think about that?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you know, who someone chooses to marry is completely their decision. And I can't say that they're right or wrong for doing it. If someone wants to marry a white person, if that's who they love, then how can I tell them that they shouldn't do that or that they don't deserve to do that? I don't think that, you know, you should change to, I mean, I don't think that it's something you should go for. Like, you know, like right now, I'm where I am, and so I want to marry a white person to make my status look better or anything like that. I think those are stupid reasons to do it. I mean, but if that's that's the person that they met and fell in love with, what can I tell them, you know?
Okay, we have a caller from South Carolina. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I was wondering, I heard a rap artist the other day, a lady called Sister Soldier, and being from this part of the country, it bothered me a little bit that it seemed that she was inciting more violence between the races than anything else, and I'd wondered what Queen Latifah thought about that.
Well, I can't really speak for her. You know, I think she's much better at speaking for herself. I think she's quite capable of doing that herself. But I think it's sort of like a public enemy type of thing. Some people have ways of dealing with situations. Some people will smack you in the face with it. And some people sort of talk to you in a more calm, you know, way. Some people wake you up really quickly. And I think that's the route she takes. There's no, you know, niceness about it. It's like, let's get to the point, and that's it. And so, I mean, I respect her for what she does. And I don't think she's trying to incite violence. Nobody wants to incite violence, but I think she's trying to get people to wake up and realize that, you know, they need to start making some moves for themselves.
Queen Latifah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. CNN Morning News continues in a moment.
And say it's that so. Talk is cheap, and if talk got any cheaper, they be selling Nike tongues instead of sneakers. K, Sarah, blase, blah, etc. This is a scene from the Queen Latifa, lovely and lyrically loose, but...
We exercise, we eat right, we even quit smoking. So, hopefully we're gonna live longer. Maybe a lot longer. Then one day it hit us. Have we
Irony of the day, jet transports lifted from the same German runways today where their piston-powered predecessors took off 44 years ago to break the Soviet stranglehold on Berlin. But this was different. It was Operation Provide Hope to get 4.5 million pounds of food and medicine into the remnants of the Soviet Union. The first flights from Rhein-Main Air Base in Germany arrived soon after at their destinations.
Well, that U.S. airlift is part of an international relief effort that includes Japan and Germany. Some Western officials acknowledge that the aid is just a fraction of what is needed in Russia and other Commonwealth states. But Secretary of State James Baker, who was in Germany to oversee the start of Operation Provide Hope, says the airlift is sending a powerful message. CNN's Ralph Begleiter has more.
The appearance of the food and medicine airlift to the former Soviet Union is massive. Millions of pounds of supplies loaded onto a dozen huge military aircraft in Germany, and more aid being flown separately from Turkey, Japan, and elsewhere. It's been more than a year since the Kremlin first appealed for food aid. Now the United States has joined in ongoing efforts of Europeans and others to create a coordinated humanitarian airlift to hospitals, orphanages, and homes for the elderly in the former USSR.
These aircraft will be our messengers, symbolizing our commitment to help freedom flourish in these new lands.
On the first day, the airlift went to 12 cities in the former Soviet Union. Japan is sending food separately to Far Eastern cities. None of the aid is going to Georgia, where fighting makes deliveries dangerous. In coming weeks, 54 U.S. flights are scheduled, mostly carrying supplies left over from the war against Iraq. In Moscow alone, all of the food on board one of these aircraft will be consumed in just 2 meals. Officials know the U.S. contribution is just a drop in the bucket.
Signal of partnership and a signal of hope. A signal that former enemies are no longer enemies but partners.
Tiny Belgium's donation is almost half as big as the U.S. contribution. Wealthy Japan's donation to this airlift is valued at just $250,000. But like the Western airlift to Berlin after World War II, which also took off from Frankfurt, today's airlift is intended to show Western solidarity and offer hope through the winter to the people of the former Soviet Union. It's the first time such a Western military invasion has been allowed to cross the once hostile borders of the Soviet motherland. To be sure the food and medicine isn't diverted by black marketeers and thieves, U.S. observers will accompany deliveries inside the former Soviet Union. Russian President Boris Yeltsin has promised to see that the aid gets where it's needed.
But Yeltsin is also asking for much, much more help from the West. Not just food and medicine, but cash to prop up the worthless ruble and to rebuild the collapsed economy into something that could bring the former Soviet people into today's world. Ralph Begleiter, CNN, with the airlift for the former Soviets in Frankfurt, Germany.
After his inspection of the airlift, Secretary of State Baker begins a tour of some Commonwealth states in Central Asia. Coming up soon, we'll talk about the Baker trip with an expert on the former Soviet republics in Central Asia.
Well, any remnants of democracy's beginnings in Algeria have been swept away. The military-supported government declared a 1-year state of emergency last night and said it will ban the Islamic Salvation Front. The fundamentalist party's headquarters were shut down yesterday following 2 days of clashes that killed 40 people. Muslims were set to win a majority of the parliament last month when the military canceled further elections. The North African nation's been working toward free elections and a multi-party system for the past 3 years.
Kuwait reportedly would feel a lot safer with some U.S. Patriots on its side. The Patriots, as you may recall, were the missiles used against Iraqi Scuds in the Gulf War. A Kuwaiti newspaper says a special committee has recommended that the country's leaders authorize purchase of the missiles. It quotes Kuwait's Air Force commander as saying Iraq still has Scud missiles and remains a military threat.
Bush administration is denying reports it is stepping up the efforts to oust Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. Yesterday, Baghdad said President Bush should focus on the problems in the United States and not in Iraq. A statement from the Iraqi Ministry of Information said U.S. President Bush would better focus his efforts on promoting his new job as car and spare part salesman to Japan, taking advantage of the expertise and experience of car dealers in the United States so as to cure the ailing American economy.
He inspired people of all races to search for their ancestors. Alex Haley, the author of Roots, died today in Seattle, Washington. The cause of death has not been released, but Haley's family says a statement will be issued later today. Haley won the Pulitzer Prize for Roots, a novel that mixed fact and fiction as it traced his ancestors back to Africa. Alex Haley was 70.
The value of helping a new friend in need. Secretary of State Baker tries to make diplomatic points in the Central Asian Republic soon. Dr. Mengele, the Nazi angel of death. Well, some new documents reveal some surprising information. That's ahead on World Day.
In the early 90s, the real estate business changed.
I've got your financing seminar, 2 closings, and a showing.
Busy day.
Busy morning.
Professionals took control, trained to use the latest marketing tools, responsive to the real human issues.
He's not moving, but we've got a meeting set for tomorrow.
One organization set the pace.
I love this business.
Better Homes and Gardens. Real estate.
Usually, when you send flowers out of town, you give the order to somebody who takes a cut. Then he passes the order to somebody else who takes a cut. But now there's Flowers Direct that actually lets you speak to a florist in the town where you're sending the flowers. Flowers Direct, or We Cut, is the middleman. Call Flowers Direct now, 1-800-621-2121.
For those interested in a Highline Japanese car, Audi offers an alternative, the all-new Audi 100 V6. The first German automobile designed to not only turn heads, but opinion as well. The all-new Audi 100 V6. To drive it is to take control.
I definitely make the best burgers. I flip them really gently. Smells come up and the juices drip down. Wait, it's not done. Done.
A1. It's how burgers are. Done.
The elegance and class of Astaire and Rogers. The on- and off-screen sparks of Hepburn and Tracy. The good, clean fun of Garland and Rooney. Lovers. Call 1-800-395-0683 and order the perfect book for Valentine's Day.
As we have reported, Secretary of State James Baker is on his way to the former Soviet Republic of Moldova after a stopover today in Frankfurt, Germany. In Frankfurt, Baker oversaw the first phase of that large-scale airlift of food and medical aid to the former Soviet Union. Baker said Operation Provide Hope's not a charity, really, but a partnership for a better future. Now, during his 10-day trip, Baker is scheduled to visit 7 republics in the Commonwealth, including 5 in Central Asia. Joining us now to discuss the Secretary's trip, and especially the Central Asia part of it, is analyst Dr. Nancy Lubin. She is an associate professor of Soviet affairs at Carnegie Mellon University. Dr. Lubin, the Central Asian part of it, the Muslim part of what once was a loosely held federation, how important is that in the strategies of the Western world, do you think?
I think it's critically important for several reasons. I think first, while we've been focused for so long on the Baltic republics, on Ukraine, on the northern parts of the former Soviet Union, we've tended to view the Central Asian republics, former republics, first as relatively peripheral, and second as if the only prism with which we should be looking at them is Islam, whatever that might mean. In fact, population-wise alone, there are close to 50 million people living down there. They were a good close to 20% of the former Soviet population, as opposed to less than, well, about 2% for the Baltic republics. Territorially, it's a massive territory. Kazakhstan alone is almost the size of India. And they're probably the most devastated republics, economically, environmentally, and in terms of social services. So their needs are probably greater than anybody else's. The implications for us, I think, are maybe the 2 biggest implications are, one, they're desperate for ties to anybody that might engage those republics and bring their economies up to a modicum of world standards. And I think if the West doesn't become engaged, certainly that's one more reason for them to turn to the Islamic world.
Why they are sort of the transom that overlooks a large part of the world with which the United States relationship is somewhat shaky, and in fact has recently been warlike. But what is it about them that differentiates them from, say, the Russia, the Belarus, and the Ukraine, and the other people that we know better?
Everything.
Everything.
Their language is even a different language family. It's a Turkic, well, for most of the republics down there, it's a Turkic language, and Tajikistan is Persian. Vastly different from Russian, more different from Russian and Ukrainian than English is. Culturally, they come from a Muslim culture and tradition over the last several centuries. Their attitudes on life, their structures of government, their social norms, virtually everything is different from the republics that we've seen up north. And while we've got to engage them, we have to engage them, I think, very differently than the way we've been doing the republics to the north as well.
Well, how so? How do we wear our hats when we're there, as opposed to Secretary Baker in Moscow?
Well, I think there are two things we do. First, we recognize them as being important countries in the world, and I think it was a vast mistake. I don't know who was advising the administration on this one, but a vast mistake not to diplomatically recognize 3 out of those 5 Central Asian republics when we first recognized Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. The first thing we have to do is, in fact, engage them. And the second thing I think we have to do, while this Project Hope is wonderful and that we're sending over immediate aid and assistance, we have to focus on helping them to revamp systems that are totally twisted, in many ways totally corrupt. We talk about organized crime. It's rampant in these republics. And help them come up with systems that they're looking for help to make them more responsive.
Could we really, though, realistically have had a relationship with Azerbaijan when we don't know exactly the Karabakh circumstance there with all the Armenians in that little place?
Well, it's up to us to learn the circumstances, and I think it's terrific we'll now have outposts out there to do so. One other point I would bring up is when I talk about how economically devastated these republics are, one of the only hard currency exports that they've got are drugs. And many Central Asians have been talking to me how...
illegal drugs?
Illegal drugs. Although in some of the republics, I think a foreboding sign, they've actually made the production of illicit opium now legal. So that several Central Asians have mentioned to me, at least keep an eye on it, that this could become the new Colombia of Western Europe if we're not... Maybe. I'm not saying it will be, but there are always those kinds of dangers as well as the Islamic kinds of threats.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Lubin, for joining us on World Day today, giving us an insight into an area in the world that Secretary Baker is going to get a better look at himself on this current tour. Dr. Lubin's a professor, also we should say a former advisor on the Soviet Union for the U.S. Congressional Office of Technological Assessment. Bobbie?
In a moment on World Day, Germany digs 60 years into its own past to bring a top communist to trial.
The average cost of this luxury car is $37,000. The average cost of the American home is $134,000. The average cost of a private college education is $45,891. Yet the cost to examine this magazine is nothing. Just call this number now, and we'll send you Money Magazine to examine risk-free. If you like it, do nothing, and we'll continue your subscription with articles on better ways to cut your taxes, how to look for a smart investment that delivers exceptional returns. Money will show you ways to improve your lifestyle, get more value from your home. We'll even outline 12 steps to financial security. So in a world where costs are high and so are risks, take advantage of Money's risk-free offer. Call this number now. We'll send you your first issue of Money Magazine to examine risk-free. If you find Money is not for you, then just write cancel on the bill and send it back. The issue is yours to keep free. Otherwise, we'll continue your subscription with 12 more informative, entertaining issues for a total of 13, payable in 4 monthly installments of just $8.99 each. Your taxes average $4,800. A retirement plan costs $2,400 yearly. Yet these financial guides cost you nothing. Because if you call now, we'll also send you Money's Financial Advisor free. It's a 3-part series that helps you manage your money, build a future, and achieve your dreams. So why not call now and examine your first issue of Money risk-free? Plus, get the Financial Advisor free. And while the average American phone bill is $45.33, this phone call will cost you nothing. Call this number now and take advantage of Money's risk-free offer. It has the perfect ring to it.
Well, there may be some new leads in the search for the Nazi war criminals. Argentina's opening some secret files that may shed light on one of the darker chapters of human history. Nazi hunters in Los Angeles got a preview over the weekend, and Patty Panicia reports.
More than 40 years of secret files that trace the whereabouts of Nazi war criminals who escaped to Argentina.
Extremely confidential and secret.
Secret until Argentine President Carlos Menem last week released them to his country's national archives. The files won't be available to the public in Argentina until Monday afternoon, but the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles was given a copy over the weekend. Already, the files have brought to light new information about the people responsible for the killing of an estimated 6 million Jews and countless others. People like Joseph Mengele, known as the Nazi Death Doctor.
That Joseph Mengele lived under his own name from 1956 on in the heart of Buenos Aires. That he was listed in the telephone book under the name of Mengele. That the Germans and Argentinians knew all about it.
The files also show that Mengele traveled to Chile, Switzerland, and possibly even West Germany in 1959 under his own name. Part of the files are believed to have been destroyed by a previous Argentine government.
The Mengele file contains 162 documents, and then they tell you that documents 105 through 124 have been expunged.
Other files contain information on Joseph Schwamberger, a Nazi commandant who helped run concentration camps, Martin Bormann, a close friend of Hitler's, and other high-ranking SS and Gestapo officers. Nazi hunters are hoping other South American countries will now open their files. Some of these Nazis are suspected of having used Vatican passports to escape. The center has asked the Vatican for secret files which could explain how people like Eichmann, Mengele, and others made their way from Rome to freedom in South America. More information is expected to come to light next month when Argentina opens its central banking files. Those files are expected to trace a money trail that Nazis left when taking their wealth out of Germany. Patty Panicia for CNN, Los Angeles.
Most survivors of the Club Med plane crash in Senegal are due to be flown back to France today. 31 people were killed yesterday. Officials and some passengers blame the pilot. The region's governor told state radio the pilot apparently mistook a hotel's lights for a runway and crashed 50 kilometers or 30 miles short of his destination. Survivors were first airlifted to Dakar, where the holiday flight originated, and 2 severely injured passengers are already back in Paris. The pilot was among the dead. Bus travelers in Czechoslovakia are looking for other ways to get around today. A bus driver's strike in the western part of the country has made it difficult to get a ride. The 24-hour work stoppage affects more than 70 cities. Czechoslovakia's official news agency says 85% of the bus drivers are staying off the job. The strikers are protesting a Czech government decision to reduce state subsidies for transportation.
Germany's been pursuing charges against former East Germans involved in atrocities under that country's communist regime. Today, the man who ran East Germany's notorious state security agency is on trial in Berlin, but it's not his secret police work that landed him in trouble. CNN's Doug James explains.
In communist East Germany, the eyes of the state were everywhere. And the eyes of the state were the eyes of Erich Mielke. For more than 3 decades, Mielke ran the Stasi, the state security agency. Today, his office is abandoned. The once powerful and feared spy master is being held in Berlin's Plötzensee prison hospital, a bedridden old man awaiting his fate. Now, Mielke is facing criminal charges, the first key figure from the former communist state to stand trial since the regime's collapse. But ironically, the trial has nothing to do with any crimes Mielke may have committed as head of the Stasi. In 1931, communist agitators murdered 2 Berlin policemen. A young Erich Mielke was a suspect. He fled to the Soviet Union. 6 decades later, after the fall of East Germany, investigators found incriminating documents in his office. Papers, they say, link him to the murders.
It is apparently easier to prove Mielke's complicity in this murder case than it is to prove that he committed crimes as the Minister for State Security.
Allerdings bezieht sich das nicht auf die Person.
The old Stasi headquarters is now a museum where the curious delve into East Germany's dark history. From here, Milka ran a network of 90,000 agents and at least 200,000 informers. Files opened last month show just how omnipresent the Stasi really was, exposing a society in which treachery and betrayal were a way of life. Investigators are still combing the files for evidence against Milka. They hope eventually to charge him with complicity in drawing up the shoot-to-kill orders, which led to the deaths of at least 200 would-be escapers at the Berlin Wall and the frontier with West Germany.
Whoever was responsible for that system and whose responsibility can be proven, he belongs before a court of law.
On his 75th birthday, when Milka was at the height of his power, former East German leader Erich Honecker threw a big party for him. Now, with his 85th birthday fast approaching, his old boss is evading criminal charges by hiding out in Moscow, leaving Milka to face the music alone. Doug James, CNN, Berlin.
The party of Japanese Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa has lost a by-election in one central Japanese district. An opposition candidate for the upper house of parliament yesterday defeated a candidate backed by Mr. Miyazawa's Liberal Democratic Party. The election was in a district traditionally held by the opposition, but the election was the first since Mr. Miyazawa took office in November, and it follows new revelations of political corruption in the Liberal Democratic Party. Just ahead, in 1988, an English tourist was killed in an African game reserve. Now a 3-year investigation is culminating in a Nairobi courtroom.
I was going through some trade confirmations, and bang, it hit me.
This has got to stop.
My broker talked me into something I didn't want. It's not doing well, and I still paid all this commission.
Common sense says you shouldn't pay for advice you don't